विजिबल है स्क्रीन शायद सबको? I think I am audible and visible. My slides are visible. So we will be talking on constipation in children. Now, what is constipation? So it can be grossly defined as difficulty and delay in passing stools, resulting in significant distress for the child. There is a subjective definition which depends on the stool frequency, stool consistency. If the stools are hard, you can call it as constipation. If there is difficulty in passage of stools, so subjectively you can define it as constipation. So each one has his own definition of constipation subjectively, but objectively, if we want to define constipation, then passage of less than 3 stools per week is defined as constipation. It can be divided in acute as well as chronic constipation. Acute when it lasts for less than 4 weeks, which is very commonly seen in pediatric practice, as well as chronic constipation is which lasts more than 4 weeks. So chronic, both acute and chronic constipation are commonly seen in pediatric practice. Prevalence of constipation, it's a very common problem in children. The estimated prevalence worldwide for functional constipation is around 3%. Very few Indian studies have shown prevalence of childhood constipation. In a study done from SGPGI around 10 years back, functional constipation accounted for around 85% of the overall constipation cases. If we look into the etiology, so further studies have shown functional to be around 85 to 95%. So 85 to 95% of all the cases of childhood constipation are functional. Then second most common cause for constipation in children is Hirschsprung disease. So functional followed by Hirschsprung. Then there are certain rare motility related issues like slow transit constipation, internal anal sphincter achalasia. Then there are certain congenital anomalies of anorectal area like anal stenosis, anteriorly located anus, spinal cord anomalies like meningomyelocele, spina bifida. Then constipation is quite common with chronic neurological issues like cerebral palsy, behavioral issues, mental retardation. Then certain endocrine abnormalities like hypothyroidism, hypercalcemia, diabetes insipidus, drugs like anticonvulsants, antipsychotics, those which have anticholinergic effects, then codeine containing antidiarrheal. So since functional constitutes a major chunk of childhood constipation, we will be talking about functional constipation with a brief overview on Hirschsprung, how to differentiate Hirschsprung from functional, and a single or two slides on slow transit constipation and anal sphincter achalasia. So our main topic of discussion, functional constipation. So what is the pathogenesis for functional constipation? There are certain predisposing factors like change in environment, change in diet, any stressful event in the family, postponing of defecation, which is very common. The child is too busy, he's in school, he's in school bus, and he has gone to school early and he is postponing his defecation. Too early start of toilet training before 18 to 20 months of age. All these predisposing factors leads to voluntarily withholding of stools. So voluntarily withholding leads to prolonged fecal stasis. Prolonged fecal, when feces are there in the rectosigmoid area for a prolonged time, it leads to water absorption and the feces become more hard. So we call it as fecoliths. So whenever there is prolonged fecal stasis, it leads to hard stools. Whenever child is now passing stool, the passage of hard stools lead to painful defecation. So painful defecation, the child is already frightened and it further adds to his fear, and it again leads to a voluntarily withholding. So it becomes a vicious cycle in which the child is trapped. So earlier Rome 3 diagnostic criteria was there, which was needed to diagnose the child with functional constipation. If a child is having a near normal growth, there are no organic pathologies like gross anatomical, metabolical, or structure from history and clinical examination, and more than 2 of the following for more than 4 weeks. That is less than 2 defecations per week, at least 1 episode of incontinence. Incontinence, we all know, it is an involuntary passage of small liquid stools. So at least 1 episode of incontinence per week, retentive posturing and withholding behavior, painful or hard bowel movements, presence of large fecal mass in rectum, and large diameter stools that may obstruct the toilet. So 2 of the following with the above criteria, that is no obvious organic pathology. So we are not talking about any investigations while we apply the Rome criteria. On history and clinical examination should be no gross organic pathology. So recently they have come with Rome 4 diagnostic criteria in 2019, in which they have tried to objectify the symptoms. So more than 25% of the times, if the symptoms are persisting like straining, hard lumpy stools, the symptoms are more or less the same with Rome 3 criteria, but they have tried to objectify it. That is, they are present in, if they are present in more than 25% of the defecations. And they have incorporated the BSFS, Bristol stool chart in this. So in Rome 3 criteria, there was no use of any Bristol chart. And while in Rome 4 criteria, a Bristol stool chart is used. Bristol stool chart indicates the type of stools and on the basis of diameter and shape. So it helps in assessing the severity of constipation. So the main diagnostic criteria for this is the Rome criteria. Now, what to look for in a constipation whenever a child comes to us with constipation? History is very, very important. We will discuss in next slide. History, growth and development again is very important. If the child is having developmental delay, if the child is having any growth faltering, abdominal examination is very important. Palpation of abdomen, whether the abdomen is soft, whether any fecal mass is palpable in hypogastrium or in right iliac fossa, whether there is any organomegaly. Examination of perianal region is very important. Look for any fissures. Per rectal examination, depending upon the your clinical scenario. If you are doing per rectal examination, then sphincter tone and whether the rectum is loaded with hard stools or not. An examination of spine is very important to look for any features of spina bifida. So then there are certain red flags in evaluating a child with constipation. So those which are common, I have highlighted them. So delayed passage of meconium is a very important history, which we all know. We always ask whenever a child comes to us with constipation. It indicates certain disease, which we will discuss later. Failure to thrive again is very important. It can indicate celiac disease, bilious vomiting, intestinal obstruction, abnormal bowel habits since infancy. It can be related to hypothyroidism, Hirschsprung disease, problems of bowel motility, change of bowel habit with introduction of cow's milk, which can give you a hint towards cow milk protein allergy. Cow milk protein allergy most commonly leads to diarrhea, but sometimes it can present with constipation. Then again, weight loss, then ribbon stools. Ribbon stool may indicate Hirschsprung disease. Then while examination, any abnormal position of anus, any anorectal malformation, associated hypotonia, any signs which indicate a neurological issue, and any blood or mucus mixed with stools, then any palpation of abnormal thyroid gland. So these all are the red flags which we should keep in mind while evaluating a child with constipation. So management of functional constipation. So there are 6 steps. All of these steps are very important. Functional constipation looks very simple. It is just a habitual constipation, but sometimes it is very difficult to treat. So first and most important is ensure that there is no organic cause, which we have already discussed by looking at the red flags. So once you have ruled out the organic cause and you are quite certain that the child is having functional constipation, your first point is to determine whether there is fecal impaction or not. And then third is, if there is fecal impaction, you treat the impaction. And then fourth is to initiate maintenance therapy. Do not directly start maintenance therapy in a child with chronic constipation. So we are talking here about chronic constipation. because most of these kids have fecal infection, so which can affect your management. So fourth is initiation of maintenance therapy, fifth is diet, fluid, toilet training, and sixth is follow. So follow up, which we will discuss. Follow up, again, a close follow up is very crucial. So now fecal impaction. Fecal impaction is simple. It's an impaction of feces in lower abdomen, in somewhere in the rectosigmoid area, or in the descending colon sometimes, or rarely sometimes in ascending colon if the fecal impaction is too much. So for most of the times, 90% of the cases, an abdominal examination, a proper palpation of abdomen, and a digital PR examination is sufficient to diagnose fecal impaction. And we should not directly go for a X-ray abdomen erect to look for fecal impaction. Many of us have this habit of going for a X-ray abdomen directly to check for fecal impaction. That is not indicated. It should not be a first resort. A good examination is alone to diagnose fecal impaction in 90% of cases. If there is fecal impaction, your aim is to evacuate rectum. So polyethylene glycol is the preferred molecule, PEG short form, with or without electrolytes. We will discuss it again. Dose is somewhere around 1 to 1.5. This is a typo. 1 to 1.5 gram per kilogram home-based disinfection per day for 3 to 5 days. Depending, some kids will require 3 days, some will require 5 days. If a child is too small, he is not taking, you have to admit the child, and Ryle's tube may be necessary for PEG-leg polyethylene glycol administration. Ensure adequate amount of water intake during disinfection. Again, many of us have this habit of prescribing rectal enema of suppository. So always try to avoid rectal enema of suppository. It has no primary role in the disinfection of child. Digital disinfection used to be a thing many years back, 5 to 10 years back, but nowadays it is almost obsolete. It's not required. So with this polyethylene glycol molecule, you can successfully disinfect and treat almost more than 95% of the cases. So once you are done with disinfection, your long-term therapy, you have to put on maintenance therapy to avoid re-impaction. If you will not start maintenance therapy, the child will go back in impaction very soon, within few days. So again, polyethylene glycol, PEG, is the preferred molecule, somewhere around 0.3 to 1 gram per kilogram in 1 or 2 divided doses. Some literature says 0.3 to 0.8. It depends on kid to kid. There is no fixed dose. The parents can themselves titrate the dose. You just start them with a average dose of 0.4 to 0.5 gram per kilogram, and you ask them to titrate the dose by themselves depending upon the response. If you do not have polyethylene glycol, then second line is lactulose. 1 ml per kg per dose in 1 or 2 doses. So the total comes 1 to 2 ml per kg per day. Whenever you are starting maintenance therapy, try to continue it for many weeks and many months, since this is a habit thing. It requires a lot of effort, and the child will require the maintenance therapy for a long time till you work on his behavior and toilet training. Ensure high fiber diet, plenty of fluids, exercise, toilet training. We will discuss close follow up and for compliance and response. So fifth point and sixth point, we will discuss it. Polyethylene glycol. Now polyethylene glycol is the drug of choice for pediatric constipation. It is an osmotic, non-toxic, inert, non-absorbing laxative. It comes in two forms, 3350 and 4000. So till few months back in India, only 3350 with electrolytes was available. But recently JB Chemicals, they have come up with this a syrup Laxolite, which has PEG 4000. It is without electrolytes. It doesn't need electrolytes. So PEG 3350, most of the preparations contain electrolytes. So it is salty in taste, and some children might experience nausea. Though it is a safe molecule, when used in very large quantities, it can lead to electrolyte disturbance. So due to its salty taste, acceptability is little poor for young children. So with this new molecule, polyethylene 4000, it is available in liquid and powder form. It can be mixed with water, juice, and milk. The earlier 3350, we could not dilute in juice or milk, but 4000 can be diluted. It's an absolutely tasteless, colorless, safe and good acceptability. Long-term use has no side effects. You can give the liquid form directly without dilution, or you can use some amount of water or juice along with it. Both are equally efficacious, and any one of these can be used. Mechanism of action of polyethylene glycol, it is a osmotic laxative. It is mechanism of action for both of the molecules. So water molecules in the intestinal tract or whatever you have ingested along with polyethylene glycol, the water molecule is bound to the PEG molecule, and it thereby increases the volume of the stool, and it leads to softening and increased consistency and helps in easy passage of the stools and relieves constipation. Then there are other laxatives like magnesium hydroxide, liquid paraffin, sodium picosulfate. So generally for more than 95% of the cases of constipation, these molecules are not needed. Sometimes I see prescription in which both polyethylene glycol and sodium picosulfate is started. So there is no point in giving two molecules and specifically a stimulant molecule for a functional constipation. If the child is not responding, then titrate the dose of polyethylene glycol rather than adding a second laxative. Normal bowel training or toilet training, the rule of one word, one person, one place. So the parents or whosoever is training, it should be one person, either the mother or father. Most in 90% of cases it is mother, or I think it in 100% of cases it is mother or grandmother. So one person should toilet train. The person should use one word, and there should be a designated place for the child to pass stools. If there are more than one toilet in the house, then the child should pass stools daily in a proper toilet. Not changing of washrooms is not recommended. The goal is to pass at least one soft stool per day. The child is made to sit at least 5 to 10 minutes after the major meals or after the ingestion of warm milk. Indian toilet is preferred, and if Indian toilet is not there, then the child should be comfortable while sitting on the Western type of toilet, and the feet should be properly rested. The feet should not hang on while the child is sitting. Diet, fluid and exercise, we all know. If the child is having large quantities of milk, then reduce milk. Do not totally eliminate the milk. This is again a common thing which we see in practice, that we eliminate the milk totally. There is no need to eliminate the milk totally. Just reduce the amount of milk. Reduce the amount of soft drinks, other bakery foods and junk foods. Ensure high fiber diet. The fiber requirement is, if you want to calculate, it is in age in years plus 5. Ensure adequate amount of fluids, spend plenty of lukewarm water. Ensure normal play activities of the child. Sometimes we focus too much on the diet without working on the toilet training. So diet changes alone are insufficient in chronic constipation, and medication along with toilet training along with diet changes are needed in most of the cases. So behavioral modification, the toilet training is a part of behavioral modification. So routine toilet sitting, as we have discussed, develop a regular habit. Try to make him sit for 5 minutes 2 to 3 times a day. Positive reinforcement, no punishment, no scolding if the child is not passing stools. So, and if the child has passed stools, a positive reward method or a positive reinforcement. If there are too much behavioral issues, then a psychological counseling is needed. Education of parents again is very important. Explain anatomy, physiological basis of functional constipation. They have to understand that they have to adhere for long-term medication, and regular toilet training is very important. They should avoid antispasmodic and anti-diarrheal drugs for pain and fecal soiling. Sometimes the child of functional constipation presents to us with fecal incontinence, and the patient complains of diarrhea rather than constipation. कि मेरे बच्चे को diarrhea हो रहा है. But if you take a proper history, then you will feel that this is not a diarrhea, this is a fecal incontinence. or retentive incontinence. So we call it as pseudo diarrhea. So again, then history is very important. Optimum dose for maintenance is unpredictable. So they have to understand that need for frequent meetings in the initial follow period is required. So there are certain do's and don'ts of functional constipation. Perform perianal and if required per rectal examination. If there are anal fissures, treat anal fissure. UTI is very common with long-standing constipation. So always look for UTI in a child with chronic constipation or voiding dysfunction. Reassure parents about safety of treatment outcome, a regular and close follow-up. Certain don'ts: don't do PR in acute anal fissure. No need of investigations. If you are certain that this is functional constipation, don't go for a serum calcium, TSH and serum TTG directly on the first visit. A big no to enemas or suppository, no antispasmodic drugs. A close follow-up is needed. Initially weekly review for 2 to 3 weeks, then a monthly review, then bi-monthly for 6 months. Then depending upon the child's response, you can decide your review. If they can maintain a stool diary, it can be very helpful. They have to understand that there is no abrupt stoppage of treatment. This is a common mistake which parents do. Once they feel that the child is passing stools normally, they abruptly stop the treatment. So do not abruptly stop the treatment. When the stool pattern is normal over a period of 4 to 8 weeks, then laxatives can be gradually stopped. Consequences of functional constipation: we all know fecal soiling, rectal bleeding, rectal prolapse also due to excessive straining, enuresis, school abstinism, mental trauma to parents and child, and urinary symptoms are also very common. I have seen many kids with chronic constipation who goes to a pediatric nephrologist with UTI, and the nephrologist evaluate and sends the kid to us. There are no nephro issues, it's just plain constipation. And sometimes child with recurrent abdominal pain can also have underlying constipation. So this is a simple flow chart. A good history and physical examination. You're certain this is functional impact constipation, look for impaction. If yes, then treat, followed by maintenance therapy. If your maintenance therapy is not effective, you reassess, re-educate, or try a different medication. Normally different medication is not needed. Reassess and re-education is enough. If still it is not effective, then you go for investigations. Refractory constipation: if the child is not responding to the constipation with proper therapy and counseling for 3 months. Premature withdrawal of laxative is the most common cause for refractory constipation. Second is lack of education of parents. Third is lack of toilet training. Then fourth is wrong diagnosis, short segment Hirschsprung disease, or any other motility disorders like slow transit constipation, dyssynergia, or motility issues. Now, constipation beyond functional. So then there are certain important GI specific, I'm talking about GI specific diseases which can lead to constipation. So most common is Hirschsprung, followed by slow transit constipation, dyssynergia, and rarely, very rarely, internal anal sphincter eclasia. So how to distinguish the two most common causes of constipation, acquired versus Hirschsprung? Most of the acquired constipation, the onset of constipation will never be at birth. There will be retentive posturing, there will be encopresis. Encopresis means fecal incontinence. There are large caliber stools in functional constipation. Functional is also known as acquired constipation. Failure to thrive is very unusual. Distended abdomen is very unusual. X-ray shows fecal impaction with dilated rectum and colon. Barium enema will not lead to any transition zone of or any narrow segment, and further you can confirm it by anal manometry. In Hirschsprung disease, encopresis is very, very rare. Fecal incontinence is very, very rare. Failure to thrive and frequent attacks of enterocolitis leading to abdominal distension are very common. And X-ray is not a very good modality to distinguish, but barium enema and anal manometry can give you a fair idea about this thing. Then a word about slow transit constipation. Many of these kids have a history of delayed passage of meconium. The onset of symptoms is very early. Feces are generally soft rather than rock hard, as in functional constipation. If you put the child on high fiber diet, the symptoms will become worse, because the issue is with motility, not with the consistency and not with the habit or behavior. There is global delay in colonic transit on transit studies, and colonic manometry is very useful in such cases. Management is by medications like prucalopride or lubiprostone, and sometimes in refractory thing, there is antegrade continence enema. I am not going into details of all these because this is another seminar. Then dyssynergia, in which there is pelvic floor incoordination. There are 4 types of dyssynergia, but we will again not go into detail. So basically, for a normal defecation, there should be an increase in the rectal pressure, that is the propulsive pressure, and there should be a relaxation of anal sphincter, the external anal sphincter. But if there is any disharmony or any issues with the relaxation or contraction, it can lead to dyssynergia. So on the basis of anal manometry findings, it is divided into 4 types. So type 1 and type 3 are very common. Type 1 is very common, adequate intrarectal propulsive pressure, but increase anal sphincter pressure instead of decrease anal sphincter pressure. So both the rectal and anal pressures are increased. Now, internal anal sphincter achalasia is very, very rare. It leads to severe constipation. There can be fecal incontinence, in which basically there are 2 sphincters, internal anal sphincter and external anal sphincters. So there is, due to neurological issues, there are issues with the relaxation of the internal anal sphincter. So diagnosis is done by absence of rare rectoanal inhibitory reflex on anorectal manometry. But if you do the rectal biopsy, there are presence of ganglionic cells. Treatment is by posterior anal sphincter myomectomy or intrasphincteric botulinum toxin injection. Then just a word about colonic transit study. In colonic transit study, you ask the child to ingest 20 radio-opaque markers daily for 3 different days, and you take serial X-rays after day 4th. And depending upon the transit of these radio-opaque markers, you divide the child into 3 categories. First is the normal transit constipation, in which there is good transit of these radio-opaque markers. And second is there is functional obstruction, outlet obstruction, or dyssynergia. Dyssynergia is also known as functional outlet obstruction, because everything is normal, the transit is normal, but just the problem is with outlet. The child is not able to defecate or expulse the stools. So it can give you a hint about the dyssynergic defecation or slow transit constipation. So on the left side, this is a slow transit constipation. X-ray taken after 5th or 6th day of radio-opaque marker shows the uniform distribution of radio-opaque markers. So we can see that the markers are there in ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon. Very few markers are there in rectosigmoid area. So it indicates that there is problem with the motility. While on the right side, there all the markers are accumulated in the rectum. So it means that there is some expulsion problem. This is dyssynergia. There are no issues with the motility of the colon. So colonic transit study helps you to distinguish a normal motility, abnormal colonic motility, and dyssynergia. And further, you can confirm the dyssynergia on anorectal manometry. So if you are suspecting slow transit, then ideal thing is to do colonic transit study or a colonic manometry. If you are suspecting dyssynergia, Hirschsprung disease, or internal anal sphincter achalasia, best thing to do is anorectal manometry. To differentiate and to confirm Hirschsprung and internal anal sphincter eclasia, you have to do a rectal biopsy. It is the gold standard for diagnosing Hirschsprung disease. And barium enema just gives you a crude idea about Hirschsprung disease. Then just a slide about constipation, or if constipation is started in infancy and it is persisting, then besides functional constipation can start in infancy. It's not like that it cannot start in infancy. Rarely it can start in infancy, but you have to keep an eye on Hirschsprung disease, cow milk protein allergy, and slow transit constipation. There are few pointers. If there is history of delayed passage of meconium, if there are attacks of enterocolitis, if there is history of failure to thrive, suspect Hirschsprung. If the child is otherwise active, well growing, there is small amount of blood in stools, the onset is with introduction of cow's milk, suspect cow's milk protein allergy. If again there is delayed passage of meconium, soft stools, symptoms are worsening on high fiber diet, suspect slow transit constipation. So carry home message, functional constipation is the most common cause of constipation in childhood, accounting for 90% of the cases. Most of the cases need a good history and physical examination. Investigation seldom required. Remember to differentiate from functional from organic. Assess need for disimpaction in all chronic constipated kids. Initiate treatment early. Continue for at least few months. Educate the family and do proper counseling. If there is refractory constipation, look for motility disorders. Thank you.
Good, Ji. Good comprehensive presentation, Deepak.
Thank you. Thank you.
But when you have, Deepak, we would like to know your opinion. You said that constipation, functional constipation can start in infancy.
Yes, sir.
How and why does it start and how do you manage it? Because so many times you have children less than 1 year or less than 2 years.
Coming to
there is definite history of constipation and you are not suspecting any disorder. The onset is also quite late. So why such cases happen? Because you are not going to toilet train them before 2 years. That is what you recommend. So there is no initial reason of intentional delay which leads to fecal impaction. So what is the reason in these patients and how do you manage them?
Whatever our main pathogenesis of functional constipation is the vicious cycle. It doesn't apply to kids.
You will find many children between 6 months and 1 year who will be passing really very hard stools.
Yes, sir. So if we are sure that by looking at the history and physical examination, if we have ruled out almost all the red flags, and if we are certain that we are not dealing with organic constipation, though this pathogenesis, it doesn't apply to 6 months to 1 year kid, but we don't have the exact pathogenesis why such kids develop. Maybe it is related to their dietary change, or maybe these kids, they voluntarily withhold the stools, but we can't say for sure that the kid is voluntarily withholding the stools. I think it is most commonly related to the diet, I think, sir. But if we are certain that we have taken a good history and we have examined the child properly and there are no red flags, I think a close follow-up is needed, because I have also encountered such cases quite frequently. All of us have encountered.
Usually around as soon as the complementary food is started, a lot of children become constipated, whereas you would expect them, now they are taking fibers, the stools to be softer.
So
but they become constipated.
I have experienced such cases quite frequently.
Just one addition in this, I feel that what we commonly encounter is that these are the children who are predominantly bottle fed and would usually have a low fiber content.
No, what I'm saying is that as soon as you introduce the
saying that after
complementary
6
food,
months.
they become
That is
constipated.
exactly what I am saying, that beyond 6 months, the predominantly bottle-fed babies tend to have a very low fiber intake, and that tends to add to constipation. And I believe that bottle-fed babies definitely have a higher chance.
So I don't
See,
think there
that
are.
is
But before taking those complementary feeding, they were getting even less fibers.
So
no,
sir is
no,
right
How
sir.
that
things have
after
Here,
moved
6
here
months
is
so.
of age, between 6 to 12 months, as compared to the first 6 months, the child of later, the older infant is taking relatively more fiber as compared to the less than 6 month old. But I don't think we have a proper explanation. Why do these kids, maybe they have some amount of cow milk protein allergy which goes subclinically, or because this pathogenesis, it doesn't directly apply to those.
Yeah.
it will also depend among the amount of casein going into the gut. When we
The
are
amount
talking
of
about
the amount of casein is less in 6 to 12 months as compared to the.
right, see if the child is on any other milk apart from breast milk, then it is casein dominant, and casein is the constipating factor. If
So
he is
most commonly it
when
is related to, because you cannot the child is behavior, you cannot label the behavior or voluntarily withhold. The child will not voluntarily withhold the stools. I think it
Deepak,
has to do with diet only.
majority of children beyond 6 months would be on home milk, and I think that would
Oh, that's
that
why
can
I'm saying
contribute.
diet is the, I
Whatever.
think, the
no,
major
no,
factor
but
in
the
this
recommendation
contribution.
is you don't need to use milk if the child is on breastfeed. You only introduce milk products. You do not add milk at 6 months.
We
That
don't
is
add,
The
but
child is on
absolutely
breastfeed.
practically breast milk is insufficient when a child reaches 8 to 9 months. So most of
No,
the
no,
kids
no.
of 8 to 9 months require 1 or 2 top feeds.
See,
Dr.
statement is
Deepak,
a statement I like to alter. It is not insufficient. It cannot meet the growing nutritional requirements. If anything is not introduced volume wise, it will be sufficient till even 1 year of age. But yes, for
Practically, I'm talking
growth
about
point of view,
practical.
it will not be sufficient.
I
Yeah.
The
think
nutritional,
most of the
What
kids
I'm
require
saying
one
is
or two
that,
top feeds.
yeah, whatever be the reason, once you introduce semi-solids, the child is going to get more fibers than what he was getting previously, and still
Yes, sir.
there is no definite explanation.
So there is
How do
no
we
definite
manage these
explanation.
patients?
You
How
just
do we
keep a.
manage these patients, and what do we give them, and for how long? We
Sir,
cannot follow the same principles.
beyond 6 months of age, it's between 6 to 12 months. It's very hard to label a child with functional constipation. But more than 6 months of age, if we are encountering, if we are certain we have ruled out most of the red flags, we just need to closely observe the child, and polyethylene glycol can be safely given to infants more than 6 months of age. So what I do in my practice is I just start them with a small dose of polyethylene glycol, or if the child is not accepting, I put them on lactulose, and I just
दीपक
observe them closely.
दीपक मेरे ख्याल से पॉलीथाइलिन ग्लाइकॉल की जो एज है ना वो 1 year प्लस है.
नहीं,
Yeah,
6
we
months है.
usually
What
give
It
lactulose.
is
It
more
is
than
more
6 months.
easily accepted by
अभी
the
recent
parents.
studies जो आई हैं लेस देन 6 months पे भी ट्रायल हो रहे हैं. मे बी नियर फ्यूचर 6 months से कम में भी रिकमेंडेशन आ जाएगा
but 6
polyethylene
months
glycol.
plus it is safe to give.
हाँ,
मतलब
100%.
it is
It is safe.
accepted.
It is
And
there in the literature.
you suggested one more thing of fiber as age plus 5. वो clarify कर दो.
That is more of जितना भी एज है बच्चे का, that is more of theoretical thing again.
नहीं मतलब
Most of
एज
us
प्लस 5 का मतलब कैसे
age in
कैसे
years
फाइबर.
plus 5 grams. अगर 1 साल का बच्चा है तो हमें उसे एटलीस्ट 6-7 ग्राम 7 ग्राम 8 ग्राम फाइबर देना है. बट मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स वी आर इट्स वेरी हार्ड टू कैलकुलेट fibers. So for theoretically it looks good, age plus 5. Practically it is not. You just put them on a high fiber.
Dr. Deepak, I just wanted to ask, is there a role of using prolonged diapers causing functional constipation? Because I feel somewhere we are,
I don't
when the
think there
child
is.
passes stool in the diaper, there's a sudden reflex. He doesn't want to pass more stool. So he just holds on. He feels a little messy. After a certain age, he starts feeling that, that feel of the potty adhere to his bottom. So is that something to do with it?
I don't think that diaper has a it's related directly, or it has a major role in development of functional constipation. It is the natural tendency of the child to hold the stools, and it becomes it's basically, it starts voluntarily and then it becomes an involuntarily reflex. I don't think it is related to the prolonged usage of diaper.
What is the contribution of iron as leading to constipation? Iron जो भी start करते हैं उसका.
Iron has no role in the pathogenesis of functional constipation, because most of the term kids and most of the kids are not on iron beyond first year of age, I think. So iron is not a contributing.
Deepak, practically iron does cause constipation. ऐसा नहीं है.
but
Even adults, iron देने से, and what we usually give is 4-5 months onwards we give, and we continue to give it till 2 years, and some children would just not tolerate iron, वो constipate होते हैं.
So
क्या वो reason है? हो सकता है क्योंकि हम 3 महीने के बाद
नहीं, वो तो फिर drug induced. It will be a drug induced constipation. It will not be a functional constipation.
So once you stop iron or change the iron, then they will improve. That is, you don't need to give any medication there.
मेरी प्रैक्टिस में मैंने कभी आयरन का ज्यादा कल्प्रिट.
My take is different on this. Can I add?
Sure.
See, when the parents say that my child gets constipated when I give iron, it is the interpretation which is different. They don't identify the big formed stool as constipation. So when you give iron, you prolong and worsen the constipation, but iron per se will not cause constipation.
It is subjective mainly, basically.
Reason is iron delays the gastric transit, intestinal transit time. So when already the things are on the verge, or they are on the big formed stools, and they don't identify it as constipation, and they continue giving iron, that goes into a stage of infection, which they call it as constipation. That my child has not passed stools.
Best thing is to stop iron and just to observe. It's very easy to stop iron.
When you add iron to a exclusively breastfed child at say 3 months, or even, you never see constipation. It's only when other constipating factors are there.
Maybe the child is having functional constipation and we unnecessarily label the child.
Because breastfeed will never result in a formed stool. So however high dose of iron you give in an exclusively breastfed child, you will never see formed stools. So iron itself is not forming the stools. It's just when the stools are formed and you just need a little more negative insult in form of slowing of GI transit time, it results in worsening of symptoms. So parents report it as iron has caused constipation. So I always tell my parents that if you are finding hard, big stools, do not skip the dose of iron. We should use the constipation to a doctor is different, constipation to a parent is different. That is what causes.
I would like to stop iron and to see. It's very simple. It's as simple.
Yes.
Just stop iron for a few days and observe.
Dr. Deepak, I just have one question. So you said functional constipation is the most common form of constipation we encounter. So say we have a 2 to 3 year old and we are suspecting a functional constipation. Is there a criteria when do we order the investigation further for that child?
So if
and
you
I'm asking more so for children with autism, because many times there are comorbid constipation in such children. So any other criteria for children with special needs or autism you?
So for normal children, if you can see my screen, so we discussed this. This is a very simple flow chart. You take a good history and examination. You are certain that the child is functional constipation. You look for fecal impaction. If there is no fecal impaction, you put the child directly on maintenance therapy and observe the child. If there is fecal impaction, you disimpact the child. You put him on maintenance therapy. If maintenance therapy is not effective, you reassess the child, re-educate the parents. And if it is again not effective after reassessing and re-educating, then you go for blood tests like T4, TSH, calcium, celiac, or you look for underlying Hirschsprung disease, or you consider MRI. No, don't do MRI in all the cases. Just consider MRI. And if you are suspecting autism, then I think there are clinical criteria. I am not aware of. There are certain criteria for autism. And if you think that there are underlying behavioral issues or development issues, just look for them carefully. If the constipation is persisting and getting refractory.
Dr. Prashant has left. So I'll ask you another question. You see, a lot of these parents, they report to you only once the child has developed a fissure and they see blood. So how do you manage the associated fissure?
First and most important is don't do a per rectal examination whenever you are suspecting anal fissure, because it will unnecessarily exaggerate. You treat constipation like you treat without fissure. That if the child is having impaction, you disimpact the child. If there is no disimpaction, if there is no impaction, you straight away put the child on maintenance therapy. Ensure soft stools in such a child. 1 to 2 stools per day should be our target. And then apply the muscle local nitroglycerin ointments 2 to 3 times a day, and usage of lignocaine jelly just before defecation.
Which ointments? Nitroglycerin ointments.
Nitroglycerin ointment. It helps in relaxation of the internal anal sphincter.
Okay. What is the name? Which ointment? Because
Enovate ointment एक आता है बहुत famous है.
Because we use Enovate, but
Enovate ointment.
Shield, Faktu, all these are different.
So
generally these are combination of steroid,
generally yes,
and like lignocaine.
Yes,
तीनों components ही होते हैं सब में.
Prashant usually recommends only lignocaine. Prashant is not here. He was here.
Whenever I encounter a child with anal fissure, I always use lignocaine before defecation, so that the child is not in fear. And post defecation, I always use Enovate cream 2 or 3 times a day. It helps in healing of this thing, ulcer, a fissure.
And this is to be used for how long? I mean,
till the child. If there is
duration, 1 week, 5 days, 10 days.
It depends on the child. For adult kids, for older children, they use sitz bath. But in pediatric practice, I have seen that sitz bath is very difficult to practice. So I don't advise my patients to have sitz bath. But old adults and older children, they use sitz bath quite frequently for anal fissures, along with ointments and other things. Until the child is complaining of pain during defecation and blood in stools, continue using ointments. Once the child doesn't complain of pain and blood, a careful and a gentle per rectal examination, you can confirm that there is no anal fissure and you can stop the treatment.
Dr. Deepak, one last thing. How much does the starting banana and all as a weaning diet contribute to constipation?
It has, I don't think it has any contribution. Most of the parents, they ask that is banana the culprit. I don't think banana is the culprit.
Banana has a good amount of fiber in it.
So it's not related. Banana is not a culprit for constipation or URI or ARI. काफी सारे लोग complain करते हैं, but I don't think it.
But I seriously support that banana causes constipation.
नहीं, then you are wrong.
Experience.
You are
is
wrong,
there
then.
any?
We can have a controlled study on this.
Sir, invariably से start करता है banana start करते ही constipation शुरू हो जाता है बच्चे को, पता नहीं क्यों.
100% of the time.
It is
the concept, but it happens. I don't know why.
It is. If then there is some other issue, because if the doctor is preoccupied with this concept that banana start करने से constipation हो गया, then the doctor will not look for other causes. So please try to look for other causes and don't just blame banana for constipation. It is not evidence based.
Do we have any say figures ki how much fiber is there in what particular food? Is there any chart available?
There are articles, and I also have the slide. I purposefully deleted the slide तो sir, I have the slide with me on my hard disk. But
Can you
most of the
add
time,
this slide so that we get to know कि which
हाँ,
food
मैं
contains how much fiber
add
before
कर दूंगा
people can upload it?
क्योंकि practically it is not useful, so
Yeah,
I
but
don't.
it gives you a rough idea how much
Just to
contains
help the parents get preoccupied with how much fiber the child is getting, and we are also prescribing something कि इतने ग्राम diet में fiber होना चाहिए. I think there is no harm in trying. What you are saying is practically difficult to assess fiber, but थोड़ा सा पता होने से useful हो तो सकता है. नुकसान
बड़े बच्चों में तो हम इसबगोल, नेचुरल एक्स वगैरह ये सब प्रिस्क्राइब करते ही हैं ना.
नहीं सर, इसबगोल वगैरह नॉर्मली मतलब मैं नहीं प्रिस्क्राइब
फाइबर्स ही है ना ये
करता.
भी.
वो आई थिंक इट इज अ सॉर्ट ऑफ, इट्स नॉट अ प्रॉपर फाइबर. मुझे लगता है वो ऑस्मोटिक लैक्सेटिव टाइप ही है. सो इट सॉफ्टन्स द स्टूल. तो इट्स नॉट अ, मैंने
इसबगोल तो फाइबर ही है यार, नॉन एब्जॉर्ब. ऑस्मोटिक करता है सिर्फ, तो फाइबर भी तो ऑस्मोटिक ही करेगा.
इसका ना इसबगोल एक तो प्लेन आता है which has been used for centuries, और मतलब conventionally it has been used for constipation and especially in adults. Even children लेने में दिक्कत होती है, लेकिन बच्चों में तो मतलब एडल्ट्स में काफी यूज होता है.
सर इसबगोल मुझे फाइबर नहीं, इसबगोल मैंने कभी यूज नहीं किया है. पीडियाट्रिक गैस्ट्रोएंटरोलॉजिस्ट तो इसबगोल नहीं यूज करता, और क्योंकि जो मैंने एडल्ट्स को देखा है इसबगोल शाम को लेते ही अगले दिन पोटी आ जाती है. तो मैंने ये इंटरप्रेट किया है कि आई थिंक इट्स नॉट अ फाइबर, इट मस्ट बी सम सॉर्ट ऑफ लैक्सेटिव, क्योंकि इट एक्ट्स वेरी फास्ट. सो आई थिंक इट इज अ लैक्सेटिव.
एक ना लैक्टोफाइबर भी आता है, बस उसके साथ उन्होंने लैक्सेटिव ऐड किया है, बट प्लेन इसबगोल इज
older children में sir it's very easy to give fibers. I mean salads, fruits, vegetables आराम से ले सकते हैं. पाउडर फॉर्म ऑफ लैक्सेटिव्स भी आती हैं, सॉल्युबल फाइबर्स भी आते हैं आजकल. कंपनी के एक कंपनी है जो कि हेक्सागन न्यूट्रिशन है, जो कि प्योर पाउडर्स में डील करती है. सो सॉल्युबल फाइबर्स भी आते हैं.
विपुल कुछ एविडेंस बेस्ड बात करने की कोशिश कर रहा है,
हाईलाइट कर रहा है.
आपने गलत इंटरप्रेट कर दिया. ये अनराइप बनाना हम एसजीपीजीआई में यूज करते थे, उससे ये ब्रेड डाइट बनती है. ये ब्रेड डाइट क्रोनिक डायरिया में यूज होती है. इसका ये मतलब नहीं है कि बनाना कॉन्स्टिपेशन करता है. जो चीज डायरिया में यूज होती है, मेरे से बहुत लोग पूछते हैं कि आप कॉन्स्टिपेशन में इकोनॉम क्यों दे रहे हो, इकोनॉम से कॉन्स्टिपेशन हो जाएगा. तो इकोनॉम कॉन्स्टिपेशन नहीं करता है. इकोनॉम को हम डायरिया में यूज करते हैं, उसको हम कॉन्स्टिपेशन में भी यूज करते हैं.
they have given a reasoning also that they also recommend not feeding banana to a constipated child.
They are talking about raw banana. आप
सेकंड
लाइन पढ़िए, अनराइप बनाना है ये. वो अनराइप बनाना आप ब्रेड डाइट के रूप में यूज करते हो. सो ये हमारा पका हुआ येलो बनाना नहीं है, ग्रीन बनाना की बात कर रहा है ये आर्टिकल.
आई थिंक दीपक को आप छोड़ देते हैं, खाना खाने देते हैं. Rajni was asking what is the first line laxative for a cerebral palsy child?
For every child polyethylene glycol is the first line laxative, and try not to add a second laxative. आप तो फिर भी ऐड कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि न्यूरोलॉजिकली जो किड्स होते हैं उनको कभी कभी स्टिमुलेंट्स की भी जरूरत होती है. बट if a child is neurologically well, in general 99% of time there is no need to add sodium picosulfate, क्योंकि पिकलिन एक बहुत कॉमन मेडिसिन है जो कि हम बहुत इजीली स्टार्ट कर देते हैं जैसे ही चाइल्ड रिस्पॉन्ड नहीं करता है पॉलीथाइलिन ग्लाइकोल से. सो इंस्टेड ऑफ एडिंग पिकलिन, जस्ट ट्राई टू टाइट्रेट द डोज ऑफ पॉलीथाइलिन ग्लाइकोल.
डॉक्टर शाम्बू भी है ना यहाँ पे. कई बार व्हेन वी सेंड देम फॉर साइकोलॉजिकल काउंसलिंग, तो क्या करते हो आप?
Sorry sir, I couldn't get the question.
Lot of these children functional constipation, they are sent for psychological assessment or psychological counseling. So what additional do you do for them?
See, sir, only the psychological counseling will work for a bigger children. where there is under what we are trying to tell the child, or the child is able to get. Basically, it's a cognitive behavior therapy. For an older child, we can do that. But for a younger child, it's more about potty training and toilet training, which after a certain age we start. So I would say, I mean, it's more about counseling of parent, how to manage a child to get him trained for toilet. So that is more, sometimes we use reinforcers for them to sit. We make a schedule about, we tell them the importance of a routine for training the child.
Psychologically, is there something which you...
So only for an older child, we can do a direct counseling with the child, but not for a younger. It is more about training the parent.
I agree.
Wonderful, ji. Good discussion.
Yeah, good discussion, Dr. Deepak.
Thank you. Dr.
Rajni.
Thank you, Deepak. Dr. Rajni is asking something.
Muted.
Unmute kar lo aap.
I'm so sorry. So what is the role of glycerin suppository in neurologically impaired children?
Try not to give, as a rule, try not to give too much of suppositories or too much of enemas. In my like 10 or 12 years of practice, I have prescribed just 2 or 3 enemas in last 10 years. So I do not prescribe enemas, and if you give a good dose of oral laxatives, I think it is sufficient for most of the cases. Enemas and suppositories are mentally traumatic as well as physically traumatic. There are high chances of developing anal fissures if we use too much of suppositories of too much of enemas, and it is mentally traumatic for most of the kids.
Deepak, just one question. जो हम PEG prescribe करते हैं, तो कोई certain dilution is a must.
Polyethylene glycol.
हाँ.
Yes, polyethylene glycol का dilution is always very important, because अगर जैसे suppose हम Movicol pediatric sachet की बात करें या हम Mu-Out की बात करें, so उसमें एक certain amount of polyethylene glycol होगा, और company recommend करती है कि 1 scoop of Mu-Out is to be dissolved in like 75 ml of water or 100 ml of water. So if we add 1 scoop of Mu-Out to 75 ml of water, it becomes an isotonic solution. So when it reaches gut, the whole liquid will either not, the Mu-Out will not absorb any water from your intravascular compartment, because uske paas wo 75 ml water hai, and that 75 ml water will stay in the gut and it will soften the stools. अगर आप 75 ml की जगह अगर आप उसको 200 ml में dissolve कर देंगे, so 125 ml will be absorbed in your gut. So इसीलिए to make a solution isotonic, you have to dilute it in a specific this thing.
मेरे ख्याल से वो प्रिस्क्राइब करते हैं, 2-3 बार उन्होंने बताया कि 8.5 ग्राम that is the cup for Mu-Out. They say 60 ml. 60 और 75 में इतना फर्क नहीं है.
60 or 75.
So as 8 point, and you can divide it in 2 doses. You said. जैसे हम मतलब जो total खासकर disinfection में you can make it in 2 doses, कोई उसमें problem नहीं है.
It is basically ये just it's like 1 + 1 2 है. 2 की जगह मैं 3 भी दे देता हूँ. मैंने आज किसी पेशेंट को देखा, वो 2 दिन बाद मेरे पास फोन आया कि सर हमने सुबह उसको पैक दिया है, तो मैं दोपहर को बोलता हूँ तू एक अभी दे दे, एक रात को दे दे. So it is just 1 + 1 2. So आप चाहे 2 बार दें चाहे 3 बार दें, it just adds on.
Total dose has to be 1.5 gram at least.
हाँ, it is just pure addition. आप चाहे 2 पार्ट में दें चाहे 3 पार्ट में दें चाहे 4 पार्ट में. I think
you are released to have food.
Okay.
Take care.
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye, thank you.